Hi everyone. Today we're going to be looking at one of the most detailed ship biographies ever written, with over 2,200 pages and hundreds of photos. It is the 6-volume magnum opus that is Leviathan, the world's greatest ship, authored by Frank Braynard, who was a successful journalist that ended up writing several liner books, most notably being the 50 Famous Liners series with Bill Miller. Now, Frank was also a very skilled artist, and his ink drawings are sprinkled throughout the series. At the tender age of 6, Frank drew his first drawing of the Leviathan, which you can see here, and in a story that he loved to tell, he would recount that he was able to successfully spell out the name of the Leviathan, but he couldn't even spell his own name. Now, this series was compiled long before social media and the internet were a thing. But basically, Frank went about it by asking his family and friends and other patrons to donate $100, and in return they would receive a volume as well as their money back through subsequent editions, or rather the revenue generated through subsequent editions. And as word of mouth spread, and as his community grew, he created the Leviathan Club. He kept everyone in touch with a series of newsletters, and gradually, what was originally meant to be a 4-volume series became 5, and ended up being 6 volumes. And most impressively, through the process of what we now refer to as crowdsourcing, Frank managed to create the 6-volume series. Now, the set that I own, which you can see here on my shelf, used to belong to 2 separate patrons. The first 3 volumes belonged to a John Huffman, and the last 3 volumes belonged to Walter Wheeler. I actually have correspondence from Frank thanking John for being the first person ever to purchase volume 3 of the set, while my last 3 books, the ones formerly owned by Walter Wheeler, have been autographed by Frank to Walter. But let's drop anchor for a moment. Just what was it about the Leviathan that motivated Frank to create this tremendously detailed series about this one ship? And in order to answer that question, we have to look at the state of passenger shipping from the 1850s through to the 1920s. During that time, and the immigration on the North Atlantic, the destination was the United States, and almost all of those immigrants came on ships that were either flagged by Britain or other European countries. Large liners flying the Stars and Stripes were few and far between, and bear with me because I am summarizing here, and there is even a book just dedicated to that specific topic itself. But apart from the Collins Line fleet of the 1850s, the St. Louis and the St. Paul of 1895, the next major liner flying the Stars and Stripes was the Leviathan. Suddenly, in one fell swoop, the United States had a major liner that was one of the top 3 largest in the world, and it would not be superseded in size domestically until the arrival of the SS United States in 1952. The foundational role that the Leviathan played in establishing a North American presence on the North Atlantic does not begin in New York, but rather in Germany, and in the mind of a brilliant German businessman by the name of Albert Bahlen. This 10th child of a humble immigration agent rose to become the head of Hapag, that is H-A-P-A-G, one of Germany's premier shipping companies. And he even became a close personal friend of Kaiser Wilhelm II. Now, Albert Bahlen wanted Germany to lead the world in passenger liners, and so he had 3 giant liners put under construction. And so the Imperator, the Vaterland, and the Bismarck, no, not the battleship, were all born. The Leviathan began life as the Vaterland, the second of the trio, and the first volume, as would be expected, spares no detail. It looks at the history and the circumstances leading to the construction of the ship. a literally bolt-by-bolt, rivet-by-rivet account of how the ship was constructed and its design, as well as a fascinating account of what a journey on board would have been like for first class, where a gentleman could have enjoyed such luxuries as getting his moustache curled for 10 cents. Unfortunately, the First World War changed everything, and when the United States entered the conflict on the side of Great Britain and France, the Vaterland was requisitioned, converted into a troopship, and renamed the Leviathan. Volume 1 ends in 1919, following the cessation of that conflict and the return of the troops. Volume 2 looks at the Herculean task of reconverting the Leviathan from a troopship back into an ocean liner, and we are introduced to the other man who would be pivotal in the life of the Leviathan. That man was William Francis Gibbs, an incredibly forthright and highly talented ship designer. This man first fell in love with ships when he saw, as a child, the launching of the St. Louis in 1894. Originally sent to law school, he spent most of his time drawing ship plans and then decided, it's not for me. And so he ditched the legal profession and set up a ship design business with his brother. And an account of his varied works can be found in this book, By Their Works Ye Shall Know Them, which is written by none other than Frank Braynard himself. Gibbs's catalogue of ships is impressive, and I will be doing a review of that book in the near future. And let me just say that his design for a hybrid aircraft carrier battleship for the Russians in the 1930s is the stuff of science fiction. But I am veering off course. Back to the Leviathan. At 54,000 tons, it was 5 times bigger than anything else in the American line fleet, and a complete set of deck plans were required. So, the original builders, Blom and Voss, were approached, and they were asked to supply the deck plans and the blueprints, to which they said, yes, of course, yeah, we'll be happy to, but first we want $1 million. And so Gibbs was forced to redraw the entire plan of the entire ship from the inside out. He did it, and he ended up with a complete set of plans that amounted to a total of 1,024 pages. Everything from wiring to plumbing to things such as even the inkwells, the clock faces, even the light fixtures all had to be taken into consideration. Volume 3 covers the years 1923 through to 1926 and focuses on the experiences of the crew as well as the passengers, and we hear of the adventures of some people with some familiar names, such as Harry Houdini, Gloria Swanson, Rudolph Valentino, and Queen Marie of Romania. And here are some photos of the happy passengers and crew, all living their best lives. And clearly, the book wants me to show you this. In amongst the fantastic accounts of the adventures on board, we are also introduced to other things, such as the ship's constant cat problem, the exotic pets that were carried on board, and we meet Oscar the Owl, who decided to shelter on board the Leviathan on one stormy night, and after being rehabilitated by the crew, was donated to the Bronx Zoo. And there it was discovered that Oscar the Owl was actually an Oscarette. With the Jazz Age in full swing and the Leviathan getting into its stride, Volume 4 covers the years 1927 through to 1929 and includes competition in the form of the revolutionary French liner Ile-de-France, the speedy German greyhounds Bremen and Europa, events such as Prohibition, and, pivotally, the Great Depression. As with Volume 3, we continue to hear just as much from the crew as we do from the passengers, and this is what really brings the ship back to life, because not everything is just wistful and nostalgic accounts. We are exposed to those, very familiar problems of personality clashes, microaggressions, and the constant plague of politics. And as you can see, each volume has, I'll try and hold it up a bit better for you, all the photos are in this sepia tone format. Volume 5 covers the fading years of the Leviathan, from 1930 through to being laid up in 1933. It begins with an account of how a crack in the superstructure was repaired, before discussing how the beautiful palm court was ditched, and in its place the jazzy Art Deco-inspired Club Leviathan was installed in its stead. The effects of the Great Depression saw passenger numbers tumble, but the ship continued to be very popular with its passengers, even with the introduction of new tonnage, as was discussed in the previous volume. In addition to the woes of the 30s, we are introduced to the third man to command the Leviathan as a liner. Nicknamed Rescue Randall, this man also had with him a talking parrot that had a foul mouth and was called Barnacle Bill. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And again, some more photos. Each volume has either one or more color sections included in a chunk within the main body of text. And as you can see, the tone with the text as well as the photos is this unusual sepia tone, maroon toned color scheme. Volume 6 brings the life of the Leviathan to its sad conclusion. After briefly being reactivated for service in 1934, it was laid up again for another 4 years before finally being sold and scrapped in Rosyth, Scotland. Volume 6 concludes with a list of known surviving artifacts, a very detailed article about the ship's engines, written by one of the engineers who served on board, as well as a list of corrections that were originally intended for future editions. And as to be expected, most of the illustrations of this edition, which I will try to show you, involves the ship during its layup, and its eventual scrapping. That's a lot of books about one ship. How do you top something like this? Or how can you even improve on such a tremendous effort? And the answer is you can't. It took Frank an estimated 15 years, and by his calculations, $30,000 to compile this entire series together. Indeed, he had the first interviews done back in the 1950s, well before the seed for creating this series had even germinated in his mind. Not only is this a seminal work of maritime history, but this is a top-notch example of social history. You have a snapshot of 1920s America, all encapsulated in these pages. Everything from the richest of the rich to the poorest of the poor. I mean, out of captain's hats, this is well and truly the standard bearer of 5 out of 5. It can't be topped. There are some books out there that deal with the life of the Leviathan within a single volume. And if you jump over to my next video, I do go over a few of those for those readers who want an option that will have all the information of this ship, but won't occupy this shelf space. I hope you found my review of Frank Braynard's magnum opus informative and interesting. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button to be updated on all new reviews that come out every week. And until the next time, enjoy and happy reading, everyone.